Hello, this is Shambhavi. Welcome to Satsang. Satsang is an ancient spiritual practice from India. It means being in reality together. I give Satsang live every Wednesday and Sunday night in Portland, Maine. This Dharma talk was recorded during one of our Wednesday night gatherings. Please visit jayakula.org to learn more about the teachings. You can find video satsangs on Jayakula's YouTube channel, and my books are all available on Amazon.com. Much love to you, wherever and however you are. Tonight's topic for my talk is, what is self-realization? Anyone that's been around here for a while knows that I often quote Ma saying that self-realize and know yourself. So her teaching was, that's pretty much her pith teaching, that self-realization and knowing yourself are the same thing. But the question for us, of course, is what is self? What self are we knowing? And then, of course, how do we do it? Most of us are probably having this kind of experience. You're having an experience that you are an individual. Probably, I would guess. Maybe you even have a conviction that you're an individual. Maybe even if you've heard something about that oneness thing, and you kind of wish it were true, or you think it's true, or you're sure it's true, but you just can't shake this thing about being an individual. The second thing that most of you are likely embodying or having an experience of is that there are other people, other individuals around you. And that experience that is you and that there are others creates all different kinds of issues. Funny little dramas that we go through in our lives. Another kind of experience that you're probably having, or maybe it's not even an experience, but it's just kind of an idea, is that somehow consciousness is in things, like it's in living things to different degrees. So you're probably having an experience, or thinking at least, believing, even if not having that experience, that, awareness or consciousness is in you. And that it's in maybe some animals, and, maybe you read something about finned horn, so you think it's in plants too. But unless you've been doing certain kinds of practices for a while, you probably aren't having the experience of consciousness being elsewhere, or let alone everywhere, equally. And then, because we live in a Judeo-Christian culture, even though if we're trying to avoid its impacts, whether we are or not, we probably have some vague ideas, not even quite aware to ourselves, that somehow self-realization has to do with upness. We have to go up in some way, right? Even if that's just a very vague idea. Even if we've rejected the idea of a heaven, or, God as a white guy with a white beard, we still have these ideas about up. Up and out, right? So even if we're maybe have some experience, even with, say, more conventional kinds of Kundalini yoga, there's still this idea that we're trying to go up and out and somehow escape this. We just have that idea in all kinds of different ways. So these 4 ideas that most of us embody to one degree or another, that you're an individual, that there are other individuals, that consciousness is contained in individuals, and that self-realization has something to do with upwardness, are the components of what in this tradition is called a navamala. A navamala means the root ignorance. And the root ignorance, the absolute essence of this ignorance is separation. An experience of separation, a conviction that you are separate and that God is separate. You're here and it is there, and you have to go from here to there to get it. That's an experience of separation, right? Even the experience that we are on a path, we're on a journey, and somehow we're over here, and the thing that we're seeking is there, and there's this giant gap. We're very, very separate from the thing that we're seeking. This is also an expression of that experience of separation. So all of these different ways of talking about the experience of separation, whether it's the experience of you ending at your skin and other people ending at their skins, or being separate from God, or being separate from something called enlightenment, all these experiences of separation are included in this word, anavamala. This is the experience that spiritual practice is designed to erode. So spiritual practice is designed to take away or erode any experience of separation that is any experience you have of separation that is not grounded in the profound experience of continuity. So I'm going to get to that in a minute. Self-realization means that you discover that you are in continuity with everything, that there are no individuals. So one of the things that you discover about self is that there are no individuals. You discover that there is a definite, concrete experience of individuality, right? Yes, of course you're having a real experience of being an individual. There's nothing unreal about this experience. However, the base reality is of continuity, not of separation. So that's the first thing you discover, or you begin to discover. You discover that there are no others. When I'm doing transmission with you guys, most of the time, well, not all the time, but most of the time I'm simply being in that awareness that there are no others. It's a very definite experience, very definite place to rest, right? And then everything that's happening in the transmission is unfolding from that. I simply just rest in that condition, and then things are unfolding, and certain other things are happening, but that's basically what I'm doing. It's actually pretty easy after 30 years of practice. So you discover that there is only one self, not many, many selves. What do we mean when we say a self? Something that is alive and aware of itself. So you discover there's only one of those, and that it is pervasive, and that you are what is called in the tradition of Kashmir Shaivism, an upsurge of that one self. An upsurge or an ornament of that one self. So like a wave arising in an ocean. That's one of the main analogies that's used. There are a few others, but this is one of them. A wave is an upsurge of ocean, right? It is made of ocean. It is ocean. A wave is ocean. It is continuous with the ocean. Yet, it has a kind of quasi-individuality.
That's what we are.
Yeah, like that. So you're made of that one consciousness and energy, and you're like a wave arising from what we call the unconditioned state of consciousness and energy. So the ocean, just there, is when there are no waves, you could say that it's unconditioned. It's not unconditioned by that form that arises out of it. And then a form arises. The form is conditioned. Once a wave arises, it has to live through a certain cycle, right? It's conditioned. It has to swell, it has to curl, it has to roll, it has to crash, and then it has to subside. It can't just decide to like go backwards or, form a different shape or, just go on forever without crashing. That's what we're like, no, I don't want to crash. No, don't make me curl. No. This thing is creaking.
No, it is.
So once we arise, we go through a certain cycle. As some famous Buddhist once said, I don't know who, the cause of death is birth.
Nip that in the bud.
Yeah. So you discover there are no individuals, there is an experience of individuality. You discover that there are no others, that everything is this one self, creating all these different experiences of individuality. And you discover in the end that you always have been and always will continue to be that totally enlightened self. When you are subject to a navamala, you have certain limitations, and those limitations create all of these experiences. So you want to fall in love, right, with some particular person. We know that enlightened people love everybody. If you went to a teaching and somebody said, oh, I'm enlightened, I'm really in love with this person. I love this person more than any other person. You'd be like, what? You think you're enlightened? More realized people move us because they love everybody. They don't just love one, that person and their kids. They love everybody. So all of the experiences that we have until we start to wake up, whether they feel good or they don't feel good, whether we like them or we don't like them, whether we call them tragic or ecstatic, it doesn't matter what we call them. And 99% of those experiences, when we're not waking up yet, are conditioned in some way. They're limited in some way. They are expressions of divine nature. So, for instance, our being in love with one person is an expression of love, but it's just very limited. Right? The definition of enlightenment is not loving one person a lot. So all of our experiences are conditioned. And the process of waking up is the process of becoming less conditioned, becoming less limited. And that happens because a navamala starts to erode. Our sense of separation starts to erode. And when that happens, all of the limited experiences and ways that we're expressing ourselves become slowly over time less limited. So just to use that example of falling in love, maybe we start from we can't love anybody, at some lifetime or some point in our life. And we just all twisted up about love, and then maybe we learn to love a couple of people. And then maybe we start to feel like, oh, our neighbors aren't so bad either. And eventually we do a lot of practice or something happens and we just feel fondness or tenderness for everybody. And we start to feel empathy and compassion for everybody. And then eventually We just feel exactly the same about everybody. That's what moves us about people who are more realized, right? So you discover that you are and always have been enlightened essence nature, simply playing the part of you, simply playing that part of having limitations. Now, in this tradition, it's said that people think, well, why in the world would anyone do that? If we just take the situation that we're in right now, we're all in this room together. Most of us are having an experience that I am here and you're wherever you are, and we're talking and there's some sort of communication happening, and at least in large part it's pleasurable, right? Even when some very negative things are, for instance, portrayed in a work of art, like we go to a movie and we like murder mysteries, and we like to see things destroyed in a grand manner in movies. And maybe we like to play Angry Birds and, launch little birdies. Birdies! I love animals. How can you play this game? No, we don't relate to it that way, right? There's in our community, there's several people, if not many more, who are incredibly attached to their pets. Sorry, Gangi. And yet, they would play Angry Birds, right? They would shoot little birdies at what do they get shot? Pigs, right? And kill pigs. You never played Angry Birds? Okay, well, it's like a game,
So 2013.
Anyway, whatever.
Is it a video game?
It's on an iPhone, right? And they would enjoy it. So this is the same. We aren't enjoying everything that's happening because we have all these limitations that create in us the experience of this is good, this is bad, this is okay, this is not okay, this is tragic, this is wonderful. This is the root of our suffering, all of these different judgments that we have about everything. But from the perspective of the enlightened self, all of those things are equal because they are all simply consciousness and energy. When a wave crashes, we don't go, oh my God, I can't stand to be at the beach, it's just too tragic. Everything is made of consciousness and energy. This is what we discover when we are realized, or more realized. You don't have to wait till you're totally realized, thank God. But you begin to discover.
Theoretically, that sounds great.
Yep.
But what about the horrible, I understand, karma, blah, 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 but so an enlightened being would look at, sexual abuse of a child and say, oh, that's just energy.
Nope.
What?
Not what would happen.
Okay.
Have you ever seen an enlightened person who didn't care about what was happening?
No, but
Yeah, so wait, just stop there.
Okay.
See, because we always worry about this because we're so attached to our outrage about this and that and our sadness about this and that. We're so attached to it that we lose all reason. Right? There is no enlightened person that anyone has ever met who isn't full of compassion, who isn't full of empathy and sympathy and love. So right then and there, that tells you that something happens when you're enlightened, that even though you recognize everything has total equality, you still have these incredible wisdom relationships with everything that's happening. You want to help. You want to care for people. You have compassion. You do, enlightened people, whether they're sitting in a cave or running an empire like Amma, they do enormous benefit to people, right? Otherwise we wouldn't care about them. We wouldn't go to them for teachings, right? So I'm just describing what self-realization means, that you are experiencing everything that is possible for God to experience. You are recognizing, you are being divinity. You are being that essence nature. You are integrated with that essence, which is made out of compassion, which is made out of empathy, which is made out of intelligence and curiosity. All of those wisdom virtues are what God is, right? Otherwise we wouldn't care. I like to tell the story that when I was studying with one of my teachers, he always used to say, Lord Shiva is omnipotent and omniscient and omnipresent, and I would just be like, wait, I'm supposed to care about that? That wasn't really very impressive. And then later I realized what God really is all of those wisdom virtues, right? That this reality is actually made of those virtues. So it's really difficult to understand, Stephanie, just with your regular mind. Right? But what we can do, even when we don't have an experience yet of the practice and we're just trying to understand, we can look to our experience of people who do have more realization and see how they are. Right? You can also look to your experience, even just the little time that you've been coming. What you said to me when you were leaving last time, that you feel lighter, that you feel happier, that things are going better with your kids. So these are the kind of things that we want to look at our really concrete lived experience. What is happening as a result? You've now been in teachings with me a bunch of times, and I am not fully realized, but I am having some experience of this equality of everything. Right? And you can experience me having that experience and be reassured that it doesn't mean that you walk around not caring about anything. Right? Not at all. Right? But you'll have to find out for yourself. There's the rub. So one of the most profound experiences of waking up is this experience of equality. Because even if you have a painting of a war, and then next to it you have a painting of a puppy dog, when you're standing in front of those two paintings, you realize they're all made of paint. That on the level of paint itself, they are equal. A painting of a war it's no more tragic than a painting of a puppy. In fact, the puppy painting might be more tragic. Hey guys. So when you start to wake up a little more and you begin to have that experience of the base state of everything, the presence, that living presence of God. You don't have to call it God, you can just call it that living presence. It doesn't need to be called God at all, it doesn't matter. I just say that word. It's kind of shorthand, so that I don't have to say that living presence all the time. It's only 3 letters, it's easier to say. When you start to have that experience, when you start to wake up a little more, then that experience of equality starts to happen. And so that means that you can be more skillful in helping. You can be more skillful in compassion. Right? Because you no longer have this huge personal stake in everything. Right? You can simply be helpful. On a much bigger scale and with much more efficiency and effect than when you're so attached to all your opinions about everything. Right? This is one of the reasons that people who are more awake, even though they're having this experience of the equality of all phenomenon, are also hugely compassionate and skillful in expressing it. But again, when we get upset about stuff like this, these kinds of teachings, when we get upset, it is an aspect of our limitation, an aspect of our attachment. Because what happens when we get upset? Then we can't actually look to our own experience that's right there with us, right in that moment. Right? So we can't think, oh, well, wait a minute. You know, I've read about people who are more awake. I've seen people who are more awake. I'm sitting with someone who's a little more awake than I am. And I'm having this experience. We get upset, so we can't actually consult what is our real experience right in this moment and what other experiences have we had. We can't even say, well, I feel better, or, you know, I feel the impact of this, or I'm recognizing things about myself and about reality as a result of this. We're just in our upsetness. And that's actually the limitation. Because it's very, very easy to see that the effects of waking up are only beneficial. Right. There's nothing to be afraid of. So you get the experience that you have always been this, just like the wave has always been the ocean. Right. The wave was never separate from the ocean. The wave was never made of anything but ocean. So you begin to see that and experience that. And then instead of the upness, the up problem, you begin to experience that this awakeness, this awareness, this presence, this livingness is everywhere and in everything all the same. So there's both an experience of limitation happening, but that experience of limitation is not different from enlightened nature. It's coming from it, as just like an artist creates beautiful works of art. Now in the tradition, this life here is referred to as an ornament of the divine. Or sometimes it's referred to as the glamour of the divine. Yeah. The glamour, as in glamorous. So one of the ways of kind of understanding the change in orientation between being more limited and feeling separate and having all these attachments and being a little more awake is that you begin to see the beauty in things. You begin to see the awesomeness in a lot of different things that you didn't find awesome before. For instance, that person, you know, who always bugs you. You can begin to see their uniqueness. You can begin to see them as an expression of this ocean of consciousness and energy. Right? You can begin to appreciate, in particular, appreciate the diversity of life that's being created. Every permutation that we experience is part of this incredible diversity. This, you know, if you want to say anything about this ocean of consciousness and energy, you could say that it's out of control diversity factory. It's creating so many different kinds of experiences just in this room. Right? Just in this room, every single one of you is having a completely unique experience right at this moment. Right? And those are all being produced by this unimaginably creative reality. So reality is another good word for that ocean of consciousness and energy. This is what self-realization means, that you know yourself to be that. Everything I've just described, you know yourself to be that. Yeah.
Reality is the ocean, is the ground.
Right. It's the whole, and the waves. It's everything.
What is this?
Everything. Just think of this room. Think of every object and everything in this room as a little wave coming out of this ocean of consciousness and energy. This is the life process of reality. This is what God does. It creates all of these experiences for its own pleasure and amusement.
So this is also reality.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So in this tradition, this is God or is in everything and arising. Everything is arising from that, and God is in everything. So what Ma says is that the Father is in the Mother. That this is all the Mother, and the Father is in the Mother. So that unconditioned... No, too much?
No, I get it. It's Shiva Shakti.
Yeah, exactly. That Shiva is in Shakti. Right. Swami Lakshmanju, who was a 20th century teacher of Kashmir Shaivism, what did he say about this? It was in my mind and now it just went out of my mind. He said that you can't find Shiva anywhere else but in Shakti. He said there's no way to just find Shiva. He said when you find Shakti, and he used the Bhairavi, the female form of Shiva, Bhairavi. When you can only find Bhairavi, and Bhairavi is Bhairava. Because this is the life and the body of Shiva. We call Shakti. So it's not like you show up and I have to get rid of all this to somehow find you. No, this is you. Right? I'm relating to this. Right? There's not something somewhere else that I'm trying to relate to you as, right? Mm-hmm. Same thing with this idea of Shiva Shakti, that if Shiva and Shakti are producing these experiences, then Shakti, being that creative power, that creative energy, that's really like the manifesting force, is producing these experiences, and Lord Shiva is that base consciousness that is informing everything that's happening. So you can't just find Shiva apart from that. Shiva is what we say immanent in everything, immanent, arising from it. And that's opposed to what's called a transcendental tradition. So there's traditions like this that are immanent traditions, and there's other traditions called transcendental. Transcendental traditions are when you say, this experience is illusory, this world is illusory, the really real reality is up there, somewhere else, Brahma Loka. Or you have to go to heaven to find God. You have to go up, you have to go out, you have to go away. So these are what transcendental traditions are teaching people. In this tradition we say everything is here. Every aspect of this reality is already replete with full of God. Yeah. And all we need to do to rediscover that is to relax, to release our limitations, to get rid of Anavamala. And then we discover that everything is always here. Everything is always full of God.
What is karma?
Karma, briefly, karma is one way that we talk about those limitations that are being produced. Right. So if someone had, do you ever see the Michelangelo's Prisoners, the sculptures that are half made? He would have you got to look them up on the web. They're incredible. So there's some sculptures that he left that weren't fully carved, and nobody really knows if he did it on purpose or if he just abandoned them in the middle of carving them. But whatever, they look like they were intentional because they're so powerful. But there'll be this big unconditioned block of marble, just with nothing in it, and then out of it is a figure coming out like this, right? So that form that figure is in is like karma. It's a very specific pattern of that marble. It's no longer, that marble no longer has infinite potential. It's now become this particular thing. Like when it was just a block of marble, it could have been a turtle, carved into a turtle, a fish, a rhododendron, whatever. But no, it's now been carved into this particular figure, and now it is limited to that form, right? That's kind of what karma is. Karma is patterns of consciousness and energy that have a limited form, that move through time and repeat themselves.
And we carry them?
We are them.
We are them.
But not entirely. We also have spontaneity. We also have freedom. Everybody is already, even though you have a lot of conditioning, you're already a mixture of freedom and fate. Nobody is totally just karma. None of you, anyway. Yeah. So, for instance, your need to eat certain things over and over again, or you're getting into certain kinds of relationships over and over again, or repeating certain emotional patterns over and over again, right? Like Stephanie is part of her, only part of her, is sure I'm going to do something horrible any day now. And that she's going to be terribly disappointed and hurt, right? This is a kind of karmic patterning, right? And we all have that.
And do we work on, does the practice help us release?
Yes, that's its primary purpose. So all karmic patterning is a form of tension. And we can understand that most in an emotional tension, but those aren't the only kind of karmas. Are not only emotional, But I hate to keep picking on you, Stephanie, but you're such a great example right now. As Stephanie is experiencing some relaxation, she's also struggling with a lot of tension, right? So she sort of doesn't know, should I relax? Should I be tense? I'm not sure.
I should probably be tense.
Yeah. Yeah. So we're all a mixture, right? We're all a mixture. And anybody that comes to teachings of any kind, not just these teachings, is doing that out of an expression of freedom. Right? Even if those teachings are limited, or, even if a teacher is playing on people's weaknesses or trying to create dependency or anything like that, the impulse to have spiritual teachings is an expression of God, an expression of freedom. Right?
So in your idea of the marble sculpture, then the practice of releasing karma is, you're already sculpted, essentially, so then it's just understanding, I'm not marble. I'm
No, the process would be...
anything.
Exactly.
But here I am, but I am this.
Mm-hmm. Well, and as Ma said, no analogy is ever complete. Take from it what you can. I don't know how far I would want to stretch that, but let's say that it basically means you don't have to follow like a robot or like an obsessed person all of your patterning. You kind of live in this much more open place where you have a much wider range of expression. So maybe that, if we want to continue that analogy, that figure could actually change and express itself in other ways, right?
So Michelangelo used to conceive sculpture as, there's the block, and he used to talk about how it's like being in a bathtub and you pull the drain, and as the water level comes down, the figure gets revealed. It's coming down. So you saw sculpture. So in some ways one can say how like the figure or the water is God to a certain extent, and the figure is just karma. And so you get rid of all the divinity, and you're left over with a strong figure of David or what have you.
Well, I think that a better way of saying that would be, are you the figure or are you Michelangelo?
Or are you the untouched block of marble? And I feel like what I'm striving for is to bring the water back to make me that whole shape, as opposed to just the individuality.
Well, remember that's fine. Remember that individuality is just an experience. It's not really a thing. So what you discover is actually that you were the whole all along. And the only thing that made you think you weren't was forgetting who you are, this process of forgetting. So you haven't actually, you know, this is kind of way too esoteric for this beginning teaching. But you do discover that there are no limitations, that you were never limited. It was only your concept of yourself that created that experience of being limited. This way that you came to embody this conviction that you're separate. Right? Abhinavagupta, one of the people that formulated this tradition, said that we want to be the players instead of the played. So the way that I like to describe this is that, that to imagine that you're an actor on a soap opera. Right? And I don't know if you've ever been to a studio where there's a soap opera being filmed, but I have. And it's really funny because they just have these like little weird suburban rooms, up on these platforms that people play out these lives in. So if you're the actor, you're presumably having some fun and you're presumably making a lot of money. And you're playing, you're like, oh my God, I can't tell Rod that I need an abortion, and you're playing out these extreme, silly situations, and then you go home, right? And you're just having fun playing all that tragic stuff, hysteria, like emotional hysteria. But then, like one day, you just forget that it's actually just a soap opera, and you become convinced that you actually are that character. And then all those pains sufferings that character is going through seem like they really are who you are. And suddenly it all becomes very, very serious. This is exactly the position that we're in. Not having forgotten that it's just this one consciousness and energy playing all these roles simultaneously. We come to think, because of our experience of separation, that we are seriously in this role. And we actually aren't.
Is this the same as cultivating the witness?
No, absolutely not. No, and as a matter of fact, the teaching in this tradition is that you must lose the witness.
Oh.
Yeah, believe me, God is not going around going, witness, witness, witness. Yeah. In this tradition, that self is described as an enjoyer of itself, of its own essence nature, of its own creativity, of its own life. Right? So we want to be immersed in that experience. We're looking for experience of immersion and integration and presence, not standing back and witnessing things. That just creates more of an experience of what we call duality. There's something here and then I'm witnessing it. Or my mind is going and I'm witnessing it. So that really marks that experience of two-ness. We do that already. We don't really need more experience doing that. Right? We need more experience integrating with livingness, with presence. Mm-hmm. That's the teaching of this tradition in any case. Mm-hmm. Do you want to say something? Mm-hmm. So the word that is most often used in this tradition for the experience of remembering is pratyabhigna. You don't have to remember this word, I'm just saying it. It means self-recognition. Pratyabhigna. It's a Sanskrit word. That we continually want to have experiences of recognizing this presence, or recognizing this ocean, or recognizing our own divine self. This experience happens over and over and over again as we do the practice, in very small ways, in very fleeting ways, in ways that we're not really sure if it actually happened at all. And finally, over time, it becomes something that we can return to with intention. And then over time, it's sort of like, you know, when you go to a new city and it's a big city and you find this really cool cafe and then you can't find your way back there and it's really frustrating, right? I think it's over here. No, I think it's... Did we really even go there at all? Was it a fantasy? And then eventually, you know, you can find your way there, but only with Google Maps. And then later you can actually just go there and then it becomes more familiar and then you can hang out there, right? So this is how the process of pratyabhijna works. You get a little glimpse through working with the teacher and working in your own sadhana, and then you get more and more glimpses, and finally it becomes more familiar. You familiarize yourself with this recognition of who and what you really are, what this reality really is. And then you can just find your way back there more and more, and eventually it just becomes your new base state. This is the whole process of waking up. Jayakula is a nonprofit community offering opportunities to learn and practice in the direct realization traditions of Trika Shaivism and Dzogchen. We are based in Portland, Maine and Portland, Oregon. Visit jayakula.org to explore more of our offerings.